Dr. Robert King describes a winding path into the study of female orgasm that began with 2 decades as a schoolteacher and a casual holiday read, Elizabeth Lloyd's skeptical book arguing the female orgasm was functionless. Surprised and provoked, he studied evolutionary biology, found two divergent research traditions, and began probing assumptions. One tradition treated female orgasm as an evolutionary byproduct. Another, older thread, suggested physiological mechanisms and adaptive functions that had been sidelined. His curiosity was driven by the mismatch between laboratory studies and the messy realities of human sexual life, and by archival work showing earlier researchers had already found clues later dismissed. King critiques the canonical lab-based sex research exemplified by Masters and Johnson for its narrow experimental setup, small samples, masturbation in sterile lab environments, and intrusive instrumentation that can miss how sex occurs in natural contexts. He contrasts that with more intimate experiments, like the Fox's self-experiments using implanted telemetry and pressure sensors during marital sex, and with European teams that tracked oxytocin and uterine pressure changes. King argues that studying sex in the room or in naturalistic settings is essential because laboratory mating resembles captivity and can distort the behaviors and mechanisms researchers hope to understand. A central corrective in King's account is the anatomy of the clitoris. He emphasizes that most people underestimate its size and internal complexity, a largely internal structure with extensive sensory innervation and its own representation in the brain. That makes it unlikely to be a meaningless evolutionary byproduct. King rejects both Freudian pathologizing and simplistic spandrel accounts and frames pleasure as an evolved proximate mechanism. Nature makes useful tasks pleasurable to motivate behavior. For mammals, oxytocin is a core hormone tied to lactation, bonding, and other affiliative states. King traces how oxytocin's physiological effects, pulsing peristalsis and pressure changes in the reproductive tract, create plausible mechanics linking orgasm to fertility. King surveys animal and human evidence that orgasm and oxytocin spikes generate uterine and vaginal pressure changes that can influence sperm transport. Historical studies on rodents and agricultural animals documented rapid sperm movement linked to orgasmic-like events. Human work, building on telemetry and experimental oxytocin administration, suggests similar peristaltic effects. King highlights a modern experimental approach using a menstrual cup-style collector to measure ejaculate backflow after intercourse. Women who had a deep orgasm expelled significantly less ejaculate afterward, a 15 to 20% reduction, consistent with enhanced retention. He is careful to note methodological constraints, ethical limits, variability in semen volume, and the difficulty of controlling timing, so interpretations remain cautious, but the physiological mechanism is plausible. Empirical work. King describes finds orgasm experiences cluster into distinct phenomenological categories rather than a single uniform event. Surface orgasms, often quicker and intense in a local sensory way, contrast with deep orgasms associated with internal sensations, breath holding, trust, and the oxytocin-like aftereffects. Deep orgasms are more likely with penetrative stimulation and thus more plausibly linked to the peristaltic mechanism that could influence conception, while surface orgasms may serve other sexual and social functions. King stresses that different orgasmic experiences are not hierarchically mature or pathological. They are varied adaptations and signals within a complex mating system. From survey and comparative work, the strongest predictors of female orgasm include a partner's scent, an olfactory cue of genetic compatibility, along with a combination of sexual dominance or vigor and considerate, attentive behavior. Penetrative vigor garners particular importance for many women because of its physical effects. King also reports that standard markers of status or resource acquisition, income, height, muscularity, have weaker or inconsistent predictive power for orgasm itself, underscoring that sexual attractiveness and fertility-relevant signals operate through multiple channels beyond conspicuous socioeconomic markers. King devotes considerable attention to female intrasexual competition and the signaling environments that shape sexual behavior. He introduces venting as a uniquely strategic form of gossip disguised as concern that allows women to derogate rivals while maintaining moral cover. He also maps cultural archetypes and fantasy patterns, dominant bad boy figures, dark romance tropes, and the recurring cycle of erotic narratives, arguing that women's fantasies often embrace dominance themes while real-world signaling and safety constraints make their expression complicated. Group-level dynamics, including other women's desires and cultural status cues, deeply mediate individual sexual choices. Female mate choice is inherently comparative and social. King reviews wide cross-cultural diversity. Some societies explicitly celebrate female orgasm and teach sexual techniques, while others suppress or mutilate the clitoris. He notes a robust finding that orgasm frequency tends to increase with female age and experience, likely reflecting refined mate choice, greater sexual knowledge, and reduced concern about signaling fertility. He worries that modern technologies and social media have expanded the perceived mating market so widely that comparative choice becomes overwhelming, potentially contributing to relationship instability and fertility decline. He flags demographic shifts and birth rate decline as pressing societal problems, though acknowledging political sensitivities. King recognizes open research gaps, why some women orgasm readily, including multiple times, while others struggle, how hormonal contraception alters orgasmic experience and partner preferences, and the precise temporal dynamics of orgasm-elicited peristalsis. He stresses the need for ethically designed studies on hormonal contraception's effects and for integrating physiological measures with qualitative reports. The orgasm gap persists in part because male orgasm is more reliably elicited by penetration, while female orgasm often requires additional or different stimulation. Cultural expectations and inadequate communication amplify that gap. Broadening the lens, King touches on darker psychological and social phenomena he studies separately, spree killers and the disturbing subcultures that eroticize violence. He uses this to caution that human sexuality includes both cooperation and competition, tenderness and cruelty, and that researchers must confront uncomfortable facts rather than sanitizing narratives. For him, understanding female orgasm sits within a wider project of seeing sexual behavior as adaptive, contested, and socially embedded. Dr. Robert King recommends his book Naturally Selective for readers wanting a deeper dive into the evidence and arguments he outlines. He emphasizes that female orgasm is neither mere pathology nor an accidental byproduct, but a complex suite of sensations, signals, and physiological processes that intersect with oxytocin, mate choice, and cultural scripts. Methodological challenges remain, but the convergence of anatomical, hormonal, and behavioral data supports a multifaceted evolutionary account of why the female orgasm exists.